G'day guys, welcome to this video series where we're going to break down everything that you need to know to master each and every detachment in the Chaos Space Marine Codex. We're going to break down the detachment rules in detail, go through what they do, and give each one a rating of 0 to 10. We're going to break down every enhancement available to each detachment. We're going to talk about which ones are worth the points, which ones you're going to want to leave behind, and we're going to give each of them a rating of 0 to 3. We're then going to break down all of the stratagems, some of the amazing power, which ones are worth the command points and which ones are not, and we're going to give each one of those stratagems a rating of 0 to 3 as well. We're then going to talk about which data sheets pair best with the stratagems, enhancements, and detachment abilities to create some truly brutal combos on the tabletop, and we're going to give them a further rating of 0 to 10. Once that's done, we're going to have an overall power rating for the detachment of 0 to 50 based on the above points. This is going to give you a real indication of how powerful this detachment is. Then we're going to include an example list that includes all of the powerful combos that we've talked about earlier. We're going to give some practical examples of how to deploy that list and how to engage with the terrain and your opponent in various mission formats. And finally, we're going to place that detachment on the detachment leaderboard. We're going to give it a tier rating and we're going to place it in contrast to the other detachments to help you decide which detachment you want to field when you're running your Chaos Space Marines. So with that being said, let's get stuck into the video.
Look for the Blood God.
Alrighty guys, today we're going to be talking about the Veterans of the Long War. This is your Black Legion-esque detachment, and I think this is one of the most powerful available to us, so let's dig into it. So let's start by just talking about the detachment rule here. It's called Focus of Hatred, and basically it's kind of like your oath of moment for your regular loyalist Space Marines, where basically at the start of your command phase, you select one enemy unit, and every unit in your army is going to get rerolls to hit when targeting that unit. Very powerful. I give this one a 6 out of 10. Quite a powerful detachment ability. But it also ties into some of the enhancements and stratagems. So let's have a look at those. Jump straight into the enhancements. So you got 4 available to you here. We've got the War Master's Gift. This is a Chaos Lord model only. Each time the bearer makes an attack against your Focus of Hatred, an unmodified wound roll causes on a 5+ is a critical wound. Now this is absolutely brutal, and this ties into one of the combos that we're going to talk about later. And yeah, this is a straight 3 out of 3 enhancement. Very, very powerful. Next enhancement we have here is called Eager for Vengeance. It's 20 points, Heretic Astartes model only, excluding Damned. The bearer is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. Whilst doing so, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, if that attack targets your Focus of Hatred, add 1 to the hit roll, and each time you select Focus of Hatred as the target of the charge, you get +1 to the charge roll. Again, this is a really, really powerful enhancement. Not quite as powerful as the previous one, but I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 3, so still very strong. Next, we've got the Eye of Abaddon, 15 points, Heretic Astartes model only. While the bearer is on the battlefield, each time your target of hatred is destroyed, on a d6 4+, you gain 1 command point. Now this one is brutal. Some of the stratagems available to this detachment are absolutely amazing, so anything that you can do to regenerate command points is going to be brilliant. And the fact that you're going to be targeting that Focus of Hatred anyway means that you're very likely to be getting this off a couple of times throughout the game. 15 points for a couple of command points is an absolute steal. 3 out of 3. And last off, we have Mark of Legend. This is only 10 points. Heretic Astartes model only, excluding Damned. Once per turn, you can reroll one hit roll, 1 wound roll, and 1 saving throw for the bearer. Now this one I don't think is that particularly interesting. If you do have a third character that doesn't have an enhancement and you have 10 points floating around in your list, then by all means take it. But it's not something that I would be trying to build a list around, and it's not something that I would be taking a character specifically to give them this enhancement. It's more or less just filler point stuff. 1 out of 3. Alrighty, let's dig into the stratagems now. This is one of the detachments that has a couple of 2 command point stratagems, so they're quite expensive, but they are insanely powerful, so let's dig into them. The first is Endless Ire, 2 command points. It's an epic deed, and just after the Focus of Hatred is destroyed, you can select 1 character from your model and 1 enemy unit that's within 12 inches and visible to that character, and you can designate that new unit as a Focus of Hatred immediately. This is going to be really powerful. It's going to allow you to blow something up and then immediately get rerolls to hit against another target, really dialing up the damage on your units. Fantastic rule here. The problem with this one is it is 2 command points and it does have a few caveats. For example, you need to have a character within 12 inches, they need to be able to see something. So with those things in mind, I'm going to give this a 1 out of 3. That just shows how powerful some of the other stratagems available to this detachment are. Next, we have Contemptuous Disregard. This is your Armor of Contempt style stratagem, where basically when an enemy unit targets you, you can spend 1 command point, you can worsen the armor penetration characteristic of those incoming attacks. This is absolutely fantastic. Previous Chaos Space Marines had a similar stratagem available to them that was 2 command points. This is now only 1 command point, and we have the ability to generate CP, which makes this very, very powerful. It's also a battle tactic, which means any units that have a Chaos Lord attached are going to be able to use this for free. However, be careful, because if your opponent has the ability to modify the costs of your stratagems, they're going to be able to use it on this battle tactic. That being said, all in all, this is a 3 out of 3 and is a stratagem that's going to save you more often than you could imagine. Next up, we have Bringers of Despair. This is another 2 command point stratagem, so it is quite expensive, but basically what this is going to let you to do is at the start of the fight phase, you can select 1 Heretic Astartes unit from your army, excluding damned units, that's within engagement range of your Focus of Hatred. And when you do so, you gain fights first. This is absolutely brutal, and if you master using your Focus of Hatred, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of this. You're going to be able to jump out, kill some stuff. Then, if you know that they're going to be charging you with something next turn, you can Focus of Hatred on that, and then when they do charge you, you can use this stratagem to gain fights first and kill that thing before it strikes. This has some absolutely brutal implications for the game. The main problem with this one is that it is 2 command points and it is not a battle tactic, so you are not able to get this for free, you're not able to reduce the cost of those command points at all, so as a result, I'm only going to give this a 2 out of 3. Next up, we have Black Crusade. This is a 1 command point. You use it in your movement phase. You select 1 Heretic Astartes infantry unit or Heretic Astartes mounted unit from your army, excluding damned models, and until the end of your turn, you're eligible to shoot in a turn in which it advanced or fell back, which is really, really powerful. And bolt pistols, bolt guns, combi bolters equipped by models in that unit have the Devastating Wounds ability. And while the unit has not already inflicted 6 mortal wounds, 6 wounds using this ability so far. So basically what this is going to allow you to do is fall back, shoot something, and also inflict devastating wounds to it. Or you can advance, shoot something, inflict devastating wounds. This is really, really powerful. 3 out of 3. For 1 command point, you would pay that just for the ability to fall back and shoot, or you would pay that just for the ability to do those mortal wounds. The fact that you get both is absolutely fantastic, and it pairs well with one of the combos that we're going to discuss later in the video. Alright, next up we have Let the Galaxy Burn. So in your shooting phase, you can select 1 Heretic Astartes unit from your army that has not been shot yet, excluding Tzeentch units. And basically, until the end of the phase, ranged weapons equipped by that unit have the Ignores cover ability, and change the attacks characteristic of any torrent weapons equipped by models in that unit to 6. So it's going to allow you to get automatically 6 hits with those flame weapons, which is really, really powerful. But the main thing here is 1 CP to ignore cover is absolutely brutal, and it's going to really, really dial up the damage of your units. This is absolutely fantastic. I give this stratagem a 2 out of 3. And last but not least, we have Millennia of Experience. 1 command point here. It's a strategic ploy. In your opponent's movement phase, just after an enemy unit has finished a normal move, an advanced move, or a fallback move, 1 Heretic Astartes infantry or Heretic Astartes mountain unit from your army, excluding damned units, that is within 9 inches of that enemy unit and not within engagement range, can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. So your standard reactive move, we've seen this with other factions, finally Chaos Space Marines have it, and I think this is one of the most powerful stratagems or types of stratagem in the game. The ability to, if your opponent moves onto an objective, you can reactively move and put more objective control on that. If your opponent's going to try and charge you, you can reactively move away from them. There's so many brutal things you can do with a reactive move. For 1 command point, this is an absolute steal. 3 out of 3. Alright, let's talk about some of the brutal combos available in this detachment. One of them is you can take a Chaos Lord in Terminator armor, you can give him Eager for Vengeance, which is going to allow him to fall back and charge, and then you're going to be able to use the stratagem to fall back, shoot, do devastating wounds. So basically you can take this Chaos Lord, put him in a big unit of Terminators with a ton of combi bolters, and you're basically going to be able to rapid ingress, charge something, do massive damage, big tough unit of Terminators. Then, if your opponent tries to deal with you in combat, you're going to be able to, in your next turn, fall back, shoot something, do devastating wounds to it, and then charge something else. And basically rinse and repeat that over and over. This is an absolutely brutal combo. Alright, the next combo is one of the most brutal Smash Lords that the Chaos Space Marines are able to put together. You're basically going to take the Chaos Lord, you're going to take the Enhancement that gives you critical wounds on a 5+, and you're going to attach him to a unit of Legionaries, which is going to get him reroll wounds. So now, if he's going in against your Focus of Hatred, you're going in with reroll wounds, reroll hits, devastating on 5+. Which means if you go in with that Demon Hammer, you're going to do an absolutely ludicrous amount of damage, particularly when you pair it with the Chaos Lord's ability to go Chance for Glory. So he gets +1 strength, AP, attacks, and damage. That Thunder Hammer is going in with 3 damage dev wounds on a 5+ with reroll wounds and a ton of attacks. There's not much that this guy is not going to destroy. And then he's backed up by a big unit of Legionaries that are all going to gain a lot of those utility as well as placing a ton of OC. It's really, really effective at pushing your opponent off of an objective and then sandbagging it for yourself. This is an absolutely mental combo. Alright, so with all of that being said, I'm going to give the combos available to this detachment an 8 out of 10. That big Terminator unit and that unit of Legionaries is going to do some really creative things on the tabletop and present some really big challenges for your opponent. So I think these combos are some of the best available to us. This gives the detachment an overall power of 37 out of 50, which is absolutely fantastic, but let's have a look at some example lists and how you can go about constructing the army. Alright, so it's worth noting before we get into this list that this list is prioritizing the theme of the detachment as well as general power. So keep that in mind. We're trying to keep it on theme and we're trying to utilize a lot of those combos that we discussed earlier. It is worth noting that in a tournament setting, you may choose to go with just one of those two combos. You might not necessarily want to include both, and you may choose to break from the theme a little bit by including other meta-style units, but this is a good starting point if you want to get into the Veterans of the Long War. So we're going to start off with a Chaos Lord. He's going to have the War Master's Gift, which is going to give him those critical 5+, like we discussed. Then we're going to have a Chaos Lord in Terminator. He's going to have Eager for Vengeance, and that's going to allow him to fall back and charge, like we discussed in the combos. We're going to have a unit of Cultists. They're there to sticky your home objective, etc. Then we're going to have a big unit of Legionaries. This is the one that the Chaos Lord is going to attach to, and he's going to get reroll wounds because that's their datasheet ability, and then he's going to combine that with his relic and his abilities to be an absolute brutal beatstick. And then we've got a further 2 units of 5 Legionaries. These guys are out there for your objective control, trying to capture things, and trying to bully those small units that your opponent might be trying to use to control objectives themselves. We have a Chaos Rhino. Now, one of the interesting things about this list is it only has a single Chaos Rhino, but it has 10 infantry. What you're generally going to want to do is you're going to want to deploy 1 unit in that Rhino, and then in first turn, you're going to want to disembark it, and then embark the others, or vice versa. You might want to deploy the 2 units of 5 inside the Rhino, and then in your first turn, you're going to disembark 1 out behind this ruin over here somewhere safe, 1 out behind that ruin safe, and then embark the big unit of 10, and then move the Rhino into a staging position, depending on who you're versing and how they've deployed, but that's the idea of having a single Rhino that's shared amongst 20 bodies. We've got a Predator to Destructor here. We've got 2 of them. They're both equipped with the las cannons, so they've got the las cannons and the auto cannon on the top. These guys are going to be providing long-range Dakka, and they're going to be supporting your backfield. I think Predators are an absolute steal for 130 points. They're just good value. We've got a nice big unit of 10 Terminators. These guys are fully decked out, and they're going to go in with that Chaos Lord. And the idea with these guys is they're going to rapid ingress, and then they're going to go in and they're going to hit things hard, be able to fall back, shoot, charge, do mortal wounds. Absolutely brutal unit. We've got a Chaos Vindicator. This is for taking out those real heavy targets, those things that have really high wounds characteristics that require a strong, high AP threat. Then we've got a single unit of Raptors. These guys are primarily for your objective play. They go in with those Legionaries that we talked about, those 2 units of 5, and basically between those 3, they're going to be taking care of any actions that you need done. They're going to be taking care of your engage on all fronts, and they're going to be bullying your opponent's small units while your big units go in and do the heavy damage. And then we have 2 units of Warp Talons. Now, Warp Talons gain a lot out of this detachment because Warp Talons don't have any... All the other detachments have no way of getting rerolls to hit. Whereas this, you can put a Focus of Hatred on. Now your Warp Talons are going in with reroll hits and reroll wounds. And as I discussed in my Warp Talon video, you can basically rapid ingress them if you want to, charge something, kill it, then use their Warp Talon ability to disappear back into Deep Strike. And then in your next turn, you rapid ingress, charge something, kill it, disappear back into Deep Strike. You can basically keep recycling that if you want. But in this, I don't necessarily think you're going to want to be using the rapid ingress on them. You're going to want to be using it on your Terminators early in the game. and then maybe later in the game, so the Warp Talons want to deploy somewhere safe. Later in the game, they want to come out, kill something, go into deep strike, and by that time, your Terminators are on the field, so now the Warp Talons are able to use that rapid ingress. So there's a few different ways that you can run this list, but that's generally where I would look to start if I was running a Veterans of the Long War army. Alright, now let's have a look at the deployments available. So I've got a few different deployments up here. We've got the Games Workshop version, we've got the London Grand Tournament version here, and then we've also got a WTC version. So I won't go into too much detail on this because obviously there's lots of different tournaments are going to have lots of different terrain, and then there's also lots of different deployment types and lots of different missions. So any advice I give here is going to be general advice on how you want to go about playing this army. But generally speaking, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put your Terminators in Deep Strike and probably 1, maybe 2 units of Warp Talons in Deep Strike, and that way you're able to deploy your Rhino with your guys inside of it, your tanks, that sort of thing. There will be obviously variations depending on opponent. For example, if they have a lot of indirect, you're going to want to make sure all your Warp Talons are in Deep Strike. However, if they have no indirect, then you can afford to deploy your your Warp Talons, and you may want to put your Vindicator in strategic reserve so that it can come on from a table edge and get firing lines. Generally speaking, one of the hardest things to do is to get those firing lines, because if you deploy your vehicles on the table, your opponent's going to know where they are, and therefore your opponent's going to know where you can move to, and they can sort of get around you. Whereas if your tank is in strategic reserves, it's very hard for them to do that. Whereas if you deploy your Warp Talons on the table, it's very hard for them to hide from them, because basically they can move over terrain, they can move over enemy models, and they can charge through walls. So it's a much more difficult game to try to hide from their threat range. So let's have a look at this one here. So this is one of the WTC World Team Championships terrain maps. We're going to look at some places that you might want to deploy things. So let's call this big one might be your, say it's a... let's call this big one your tanks, and let's call this little one your infantry. So there's a few different things you can do here. So one of them is you might want to put your predators and stuff, if your opponent has a lot of long-range shooting, you might want to put them back here somewhere. And basically what that's going to allow you to do is that in your turn, you're going to be able to move your tanks out here and shoot anything that hops on the center. And if they come onto this one, you'll be able to move up into here, and as long as you're wholly on that base, you'll be able to see through, and you'll be able to target anything that's holding that objective there. So there's a few different options there. I would probably start with 1 predator behind here and 1 predator behind here, and that way your opponent can't shoot you, but the predator that's behind here is going to be able to move out and draw a line down here, and then the predator that's in here is going to be able to come out here and draw a line down there as well. So that's the sort of general area that you're going to want to deploy your tanks. And then you're going to basically want to deploy a bunch of infantry in front. You're probably going to want to put your Rhino all the way up snug into this corner, because one of the beautiful things about the Rhino is it's going to be shorter than the ruined walls, so it can go all the way in the ruin and still not be visible to enemy units. And then from there, you're going to be able to launch out your infantry squads and very easily tag the center of the board, or very easily tag this objective here. So if you can go cool between that Rhino, I've got these 2 somewhat locked down with my big scary Chaos Lord unit, and then the 2 units of 5 as well are able to threaten these. And then you go cool, we've got predators over here and over here. That means that we're fine with that. We've got plenty of damage, aiming at those objectives. And then you've got your Terminators in rapid ingress, so whichever one of these flanks your opponent goes for, you can then respond and send your Terminators. And you've also got the Warp Talons as well, so lots of play here. Warp Talons could probably deploy against the wall here, so that in their first turn they can jump out onto this ruin, and then they're in a position where they're staged to threaten that, but they're not visible to enemy shooting, so that's a really powerful little combo as well. On your more standard GW terrain, you're going to have a similar situation where you're going to prioritize having your Warp Talons might deploy in here somewhere where they're out of line of sight, or they might deploy behind here, and the same thing goes with your Predators. This terrain map has actually got a really interesting little nook up here, where if you're deployed here and your opponent is down here somewhere, let's get some green dots out. Say this is your opponent here, this little green dot. And he basically is going to not be able to hit you. If you're this red dot up the top here, the big red dot, he's not going to be able to hit you, because if he moves out this way, he can't shoot you. And if he moves out over this way, he can't shoot you. And if he tries to run straight through the center, he can't shoot you. So that's a really good spot for something like a Warp Talon unit or a Legionary unit or something that's relatively squishy. And then your big long range vehicles, they're going to want to come all the way over here because that way they can't be targeted until you choose. And then basically, when your opponent puts out sufficient threats, you can then respond with your tanks coming out here or another tank in here that can come straight through that gap there. And then he can shoot anything that's on the objectives that are down here. There's a lot of options you can do there, but the general principle with this army is going to be deploy in such a way to absolutely minimize the damage your opponent can do to you, even if that means sacrificing some of your own damage by, for example, having your predators all the way back. You're sacrificing some of your damage because you're making it relatively easy for your opponent to hide from them, but you're not letting your opponent do any unnecessary damage to you. That's the goal here. Let's have one final look at one of the London Grand Tournament ones. This one's actually probably the best deployment type for this style of army because you're going to be able to fit all of your tanks in this ruin here, and that ruin has a big line of sight blocking wall. So you're going to be able to fit a lot of stuff in here, and then you're going to be able to fit your Warp Talons, etc. in here and in here, and you're basically going to be able to deploy your whole army, so it's very safe early. In this one, I would probably be putting the Rhino in this section here because it's going to be very safe and it's very close to all of those objectives, which means you're maximizing your potential to respond to your opponent. And then, depending on where they go, they're generally going to pick one side and head towards it. And if they do that, you're going to send Terminators to that side and absolutely collapse them. So, yeah, that's the general advice on how I would go about deploying this army, is basically keep your tanks safe, keep your infantry safe, and then keep your other stuff in deep strike, and then wait until your opponent overextends, and then you send everything out. Then the Predators come out, they shoot things, the Warp Talons come out, they charge things, the Chaos Lord goes in, he charges something chunky, the Terminator's rapid ingress, and then they, in the next turn, charge something really chunky, and you can basically just overwhelm your opponent with massive amounts of damage. Alrighty, so with all of that being said, we've discussed the list, we've discussed how to deploy it, we've got all the stratagems, enhancements, combos. Let's see where this lands on the detachment leaderboard. Now, obviously, this being the first one that we've reviewed, it's going to land at the top. So let's pull in our Veterans of the Long War, place it right here at the top, and then we'll basically see what happens with the rest of the detachments as we go through them. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Head over to blogforthebloodgod.com and you can find out ways to support the channel there if you did enjoy this free content. So with that being said, thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.